often we humans like to take very complicated, complex things and, and boil them down into very simple models. And I think we all realize the peril in that. But could this be thought of as we're all a puzzle? Different puzzles, different pieces, but we have a box. All the puzzle pieces are there. We just don't know how to put them together because we can't see what the puzzle looks like.
I love that metaphor. I think that is fantastic.
All right, tonight, Megan and I have the distinct honor of interviewing or talking with the co-authors of a book called The Inside Guide. And the first thing I wanted to do, kind of to whet your appetite, is to uh, talk about a quote that was on their book from somebody that almost everybody on the planet knows, who is Jack Canfield, who's the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he says, Michael, DiPietro, and Marcey Donnelly have written what I consider to be a really valuable book full of deep truth and wisdom to put the power of their approach in the hands of readers. It is much deeper, more holistic, more profound than most of what other practitioners do. This is really important work, and so many people are in need of it. And I agree. This book is pretty incredible. And now I'm going to introduce another quote that I really like that I think kind of might coalesce pretty well with what they teach. And this one comes from Willie Nelson. And quote, it is, if you can be content right now, then you'll always be content because it's always right now.
Nice.
So just a little brief background and bio on Michael and Marcey. Michael has been guiding people to overcome obstacles and awaken to authenticity, fulfillment, and life purpose. He has a BS in engineering, is a certified master practitioner of NLP, which we'll get to, a martial arts instructor, a skilled body worker, which is not what I thought it was, a meditation teacher, and has spent time in both Buddhist and Benedictine monasteries. And Marcey is a 30-year veteran in the banking and finance industry, which is how we met, a master project manager who's led and delivered dozens of multi-million-dollar changes to her organizations. She's a certified Six Sigma, has a passion for helping others, and is a leader in her local business community and children's school PTAs. She is a member of the International Center for Reiki Training and is a certified Reiki master. Both Michael and Marcey live in the San Francisco Bay Area. So welcome, Michael and Marcey.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, sure. Thanks for being here.
And, thank you for being here.
Yeah, so we're just going to jump into it and kind of have like a free-flowing conversation about the book, about the principles taught in the book, kind of how they got there, how they met. I'm most interested because I kind of consider myself a content creator, and I have written a few books, none in this realm, but my kind of where I started was I wanted to know how you wrote the book. I know it started as like an interview or a conversation between you two. You recorded them, you took transcripts, and then you edited them. But tell us a little bit about that. How did the book come about?
Should I start, Marcey?
Yes, Go ahead.
Okay. So oddly enough, I have an impediment to writing, and I was like, I don't write very well when there's a blank screen, and I wanted to write a book, and I said, how can I get a workaround on this? How can I really get a way to make this happen? And I knew when I was talking to someone, the content flows really easily for me. And so I thought about who that person might be, who could be my muse, so to speak, or my sounding board. And several times in my meditation, Marcey kept coming up. And Marcey had been a client of mine. And so I was a little bit hesitant about reaching out to her since she'd been a client. But the third time she came up in my meditation, I was like, all right, this is truly meant to be. I really need to reach out. And so I dialed Marcey and I said, Marcey, do you want to write a book? and then I'll pass it over to her for her experience.
And I said, absolutely. And then I said, by the way, you probably don't know that I have no idea how to write a book. I have no idea about publishing. I have no knowledge. I've never done this, but I'll give it a shot because I was so passionate about Michael's work and how it changed my life. And I've done thousands of hours of conferences and spent money on books and classes and, podcasts and listened. And the biggest shifts that I've received, the most permanent way that I've been able to kind of overcome obstacles and really start living my purpose was through this work. So I always call him for appointments. So when he called me, I thought, what the heck is this? And then when he asked me, I had zero hesitation. And that is the call that has made a huge change in my life.
Yeah.
And then cool.
What
That's
we did
amazing.
is we used an app called Otter, and we just transcribed the conversations that we had and then took those, popped them into the outline and edited them from there. And that's how we got all the content of the book. So,
Oh, cool.
And I love
use
the
Otter
result.
every day.
Yeah, I love the result and how this is laid out, because a lot of the times when you buy a book like this, it does a really great job of explaining and, telling you and whatnot. But this, it almost cements it into a conversation of how does this apply to real life? What does this actually look like and mean? And I really appreciated that because I had done a lot of study on the subject. And when I got this book, I was like, wow, this sums up a lot of things that I've learned. And it's really practical. And, going through a stressful time and being able to pick this up and just reread a chapter or a piece of it is really helpful. So I love that. I mean, maybe you were averse to writing, but the result, it seems very intentional that you would write it in this way because it does cement it for the reader.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that feedback. That's really wonderful to hear. And that process was unique. But what I found is I can be very abstract sometimes. And that was the beauty of the collaboration is Marcey would always pull out, I'd pull out a concept and she'd say, she would literally ask me, how does that apply? What's the application? How does someone use this in a practical way? And
right.
so she
or what
was
does that
always,
even mean?
Right. And she was always drawing out more of the goodness around the concepts and everything. So that was the beauty of the collaboration that I really appreciated.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I would say we need to exercise. I'm very practical, and I like that there's summaries at the end of each section, and that it's not just content to read through, but it's broken up by helpful hints and ways, and some of our just transcripts of our conversations, because sometimes catching that and hearing what a real one-on-one session with Michael is like, it's best captured by a transcript. So it was so much fun to write. It took about a year, and it was a really amazing process.
Oh, that's awesome. So how do you feel about all of this being now in the public eye? Are you a public person? How did this feel for you?
That's funny you asked, Megan, because we got our proof copy and I was heading out to Seattle. So I said, I'm just going to read it on my trip to Seattle. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much of me in here. And so I called Michael. I was like, yeah, I'm reading the book. It's great. I'm glad. I think we're pretty close. But I said, there's a lot of my name in here that I didn't realize. But just even through writing it, I have to live it. And so, and part of really the whole concept of the book is just living your purpose and kind of figuring out how you work internally, how your brain works, what's natural, what's conditioned, what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of. And so I can't show up as anything other than who I am 100%. And I own it and I love it. And so having my name in it did not bother me. And I think my mom bought a copy, but I don't know if she's read it yet. So we'll see.
I love that.
She's coming to a workshop soon, so she'll be able to see it in action. So there's no hiding, and I'm super proud of it.
Oh, that's
cool.
so great.
And I love, I'm actually kind of shy sometimes, but put me on stage with this content and I light up. Really, it's my niche. So being in the public eye around this particular body of work is really what I was born to do. So I feel great about it.
Right.
I hope you guys are recording your sessions when you do those live events.
We just did a really beautiful retreat, a weekend retreat, and we have some recording from that, but we have definitely a note to continue to do that. They're pretty amazing.
Good. So, I started reading the book and I started taking notes, and then I reread and just kept going. And so I'm going to start at the beginning, or close to the beginning. So you talk about the mountaintop and the village. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What is it, or what are they? How do you get there? And what's the significance?
Sure. Well, the mountaintop and the village is a metaphor we use to talk about the journey to, can go by many names: enlightenment, awakening, your peak experience, when you're in a retreat moment and everything is crystal clear and you're calm and you're full of love and bliss, right? That's a total peak experience in life. And so usually it takes some retreat from our everyday life. And so that's why we call it going to the mountaintop. You're removing yourself from your everyday life and going to the mountaintop where you're doing the on the top of the mountain and having that really profound experience, right? Well, that's not uncommon for a lot of people. So a lot of people are able to get that these days, and we have enough in the collective conscious where people get a sense of the peak experience and the breakthrough and these poignant moments in our life. But where a lot of people have difficulty is, how do I bring that back to my everyday life? And so we include the journey back to the village. It's like, okay, you can have your mountaintop, but then how do I live it on a day-to-day basis? Rather than just this peak that fades away and now I'm back to the old state, we give a roadmap to integrate that peak experience so you can live it more in your everyday life. Now, it's not going to be the full brunt of what you experience on the mountaintop, but we call it coming back to the village, and you do that through your individuality. You do that through the uniqueness of who you are. So the whole journey, it's a journey leaving your village, going for some peak experience, and then taking that and integrating it back into your everyday life so that you can live a more fulfilling life. You can be more alive, more awake, more fulfilled in the tasks you're doing, even when you're doing the dishes, right? That can be a fulfilling experience. So that's the whole journey that we talk about in that metaphor.
Right.
Maybe Marcey has some other take on it.
Well, I've just hit that mountaintop experience so many times at a conference or out in nature, or these beautiful moments with my children where it's just complete love and connection. And then I have to get on the street and go drive, and somebody cuts me off, and it's like, there goes that mountaintop experience. And so I had all these triggers, and triggers still come up. It's not mountaintop 24/7, but the recovery from those triggers is instant, even and triggers largely go away. And so that's what I wanted. I always felt like something was missing, and that's why I kept going on this search. Like, gosh, I just don't feel fulfilled. And part of it is just this mountaintop experience, but then how can I live that? And it really goes back to living purpose, which is kind of the, spoiler alert, it's like the ending of the book, but it's sprinkled throughout. And that's really how I bring the mountaintop to my daily life, is kind of clearing stuff out and then staying connected to my purpose.
Right.
But I like I told Michael, he said, nothing's broken. And it's one of the things in the book, like, you're not broken. This is not a you problem. You are whole and complete. And I said, you know how many thousands of dollars I've spent on books to try and figure that out. And then,
right.
Yeah, right. And I kept searching for something. It's the inside guide, because it's going inside it and just observing and sitting with and loving, accepting yourself with all of your, shadows and dark and preferences and this and that. And then learning to celebrate that and live fully in like yourself and owning it. And
Right.
so it's that, because I knew I'd never be a monk sitting on a mountaintop full time, although that seems lovely.
Right. But you
Yeah.
did mention that some people can live the mountaintop experience, like that there are some people, and I think you mentioned the name hermits. Was that in this book? Yeah.
Yeah.
And where does that come from? I mean, do you mean that in like the traditional sense, or like are you talking about it in like the sense of human design? Is that what you were kind of?
No, it's more so within the monastic tradition of the West, and more specifically, I was raised in Catholicism, and I have a more of a universalist kind of view on things now that includes all religion. But within that sect, there's the monastic tradition, and within the monastic tradition, there's varying degrees of how in the world the monks are. They're either active in the world versus completely hermetic and completely withdrawn from daily life. And so very few people are authentically called to that, but there are a few, to live in a completely isolated, like no contact with other people. And we're just not, we're social creatures. So we're just not wired that way, most of us. But there are a few individuals that really hold that space, and they're very, I imagine, I've never met one, but I imagine to talk and be in the presence of a person like that must be an incredible experience. But what a hard and difficult path that must be, right?
Exactly. So you mentioned, you said you were raised Catholic. A lot of what I've read in here is Buddhist theology, or and you call yourself like a universalist. In the book, it, like, one of the main things is that you're not broken. And I remember the first time that I heard that, and it was like so revolutionary to me. And I was like, I had an experience just like Marcey, like, what? Like, oh, really? Like, I've been doing all this work, like, and so the main theme in a lot of Western religion is that we are broken. How do you answer back to that? That, how do you make sense? How do you answer back to that when people say,
if that's what a person wants to believe, who am I to tell them different? It's all belief systems, right?
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
And we get the results of what we believe. Our belief determines our experience. So it's a system that works. If I believe I'm broken and I'm on this journey, but where does that lead? Like, do I have to always believe I'm broken, or does it, like,
or is there an end? Leading, like, can we get, yeah.
I mean, does it end in a perfection or a completeness or a whole? I think that's the eventual goal of even in the West of any religion, is that you find God, right? And you find that experience of wholeness. I'm just starting at that point.
Right. Like it's very hopeful to know that, like, we can experience that now in our lifetime in the real world. Like, and I think that, just a lot of how we were raised and the belief systems that we were raised in. And I think you talk about this in the book. It forms these ruts in our mind that I am broken, I am broken, I am broken. And you go along this thought process. And then when you realize, like, oh my gosh, like, no, I'm not, I am a whole and complete person as I am. It's very, it's really freeing, and it's really helpful to say that. And you really lay that out really well here. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
It's a great perspective, and it's hard to swallow.
Yeah.
And I am not religious, so I wasn't, I found God and now I'm perfect, or I'm, I don't believe any of that stuff. But I, in a prior podcast, I don't remember which one it was, Megan, but we went at length about how I felt like everybody is broken.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on perspective, right? And yours is a good perspective to take because it's positive, whereas
Yeah.
mine is negative. But the negative part about it is, yes, we're all broken, all of us, and that's okay. And what we're really trying to endeavor to do is to improve. So I was going to say a joke, I'll say it anyway, but you know, if this isn't broken, what is it? You know, we all have faults and foibles, and we make mistakes, and we do these things, and sometimes we do things that we really are ashamed of, and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they are just words, and I know you're into words, so that's part of your background. And so am I. So it's just hard to reconcile because, you know, it's almost like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Well, let's reconcile this right now, because
Yeah.
I think this is a beautiful opening, and what you're laying out here, there is some truth to what you're saying. I mean, we are flawed. We do have personalities, right? So the wholeness I'm talking about is the greater aspect of who we are, the totality of who we are. And sometimes in our mind, we're identified with only a portion of who we are. And we're saying, that's me, right? And we could call that my personality or my preferences, and really it's an identity, but the identity is created in our mind. So we could say we have that whole identity and we have a limited identity, right? And so part of the journey is if we posit that wholeness and we say it just because I'm whole and complete doesn't give me a pass on doing the work, right? I still have to do the work. I still have to face the patterns and the triggers and the buttons and all the things that I'm working on in my personality. But to do it from that place of wholeness changes the game.
Yeah.
It changes the game because it says the process that I'm going through is natural and normal and organic, and I'm constantly revising who I think I am to be more and more of that greater being. And so I don't see it as in a way, it's just a perspective, I guess. You know, you could say it's an improvement, or you could say it's a tearing away of the illusion of who you think you are.
Yeah. So often we humans like to take very complicated, complex things and boil them down into very simple models. And I think we all realize the peril in that. But could this be thought of as we're all a puzzle, different puzzles, different pieces, but we have a box. All the puzzle pieces are there. We just don't know how to put them together because we can't see what the puzzle looks like.
I love that metaphor. I think that is fantastic.
Use that in your next book. You have my permission.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to look at it, and not just a puzzle, but that the whole essence of who we are in our life and our incarnation, this being that we are, is a mystery. Like we can't figure it out really, and that, to me, that's the beauty of it. That's the joy of when you can live the mystery and you don't have to have everything neatly defined. Like I don't have to put myself in a little box and know this and that. I mean, it helps to know your preferences and what you like, but this puzzle metaphor is great because we are doing that. I like also like the concept of like a treasure hunt, or you know, you're stalking something or looking for clues and really trying to play as much as possible in this mystery unfolding as you. Right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and the whole process of doing this, we are focusing on, and it talks about it from the very beginning as going inward. And I think like in our culture, often people may respond as like, what does that even mean? So like, Marcey, from the beginning, like, did you know what that meant, or has it been a discovery for you to like find the meaning in what it means to go inward to find these answers?
It's funny because I always thought I went inward. I mean, I've been meditating you know, since I was 18, and I had some of those life-changing transformational books show up, for the last 30 something years. And so I thought I looked inward, but my obstacles kept coming up. There were certain things that I couldn't overcome and get a handle of. And I would get kind of frustrated saying, I'm pretty smart. I have like the house and the husband and like what would look like a successful life, but I still
check.
Right. And so I kept looking outside of myself. I would, compare like, gosh, why does that person seem like they have their stuff together? And I've spent time at some of these conferences with amazing thought leaders. And I knew that there was something special there, but I was still looking outside. I was still looking for someone to tell me something that would automatically like shift the way I saw things, and then I would be fixed. And when the concept came up of that there's nothing broken, nothing needed to be fixed, and that basically and like to realize for myself, like I've lived from the neck up most of my life. We all have these supercomputer brains that process things, and to really start to understand through Michael's training with NLP and his career working with individuals, to really understand like what's me versus what is my programming. What are these little connections that were developed as a young child, and a lot of times they were kind of defense mechanisms that worked back then, but guess what, they don't work as an adult. So he has this amazing way of going in and doing like this minor surgery to go in and kind of shift things around and rewire things or disconnect things. And like I always say, I don't remember how my brain worked 5 years ago, because I just remember, like the only thing I could recall is waking up in the middle of the night with a ton of things on my mind, and then or like burning myself out, signing up for things, making all these commitments, like drive. And then when I realized like how I work best and where that drive is actually coming from, which was conditioning, now life is so much more enjoyable. I get way more done with ease. I mean, it's amazing. So but it's very specific to my experience. And so to realize that the world I've created, including the things that trigger me, are kind of calls for this inside look at yourself, to really just be curious about, gosh, what was that about? And is that something, that was developed? Is that something that I want to kind of understand and maybe disconnect from? Or is it something that I love about me? Like I learned that I'm a person that's naturally driven. Like regardless of my list, regardless of waking up at 3:00 in the morning, even if I did none of that, I would still get stuff done because that's part of who I am. And that's like, I got rid of all those lists. I do things with ease and I still get stuff done. It's like, it's amazing. I still have spreadsheets I like. But, so learning to see what's kind of more authentic to me versus the manufactured conditioned me, and going in kind of from a neurological perspective and getting those shifts has really completely changed how I look at the outside world. But it all was inside. It's all manufactured inside.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
Where science has already shown we're projecting our entire perception of the universe from within ourselves, right? So everything you experience, even other people, is remade inside your own brain, right? And so are we really experiencing this thing called life, or is it like a big hologram, right? That's gives us exactly the experiences we need and the experiences we create in our own perception, right? And so when you can kind of play with that and realize that it is kind of like the Matrix and it is programmable. And that's what neurolinguistic programming is starting to get into the neural pathways and how your brain actually processes information and how you can shift through making different connections in the neural pathways, shift your perception and shift your actual experiences so that you just feel different, things show up differently, you're having a different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. Number one, I got injured. I got hit by a car when I was 17 years old, and I had some surgery, and I was going through therapy, physical therapy, and it was interesting that the therapist. So I had pre-surgery physical therapy, which was just grunt work, like get these muscles strong, and so you'll recover faster. And then there was the rehab after, and that therapist. It was interesting because I had never heard this, but damage to your body, especially your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
the nerves in that body part that was affected. For me, it was my knee. Um, they're damaged. They're not necessarily going to repair, but by doing the exercises, by doing the work, by the brain body connection, your body actually makes new
Mm-hmm.
pathways, new nerves develop, and all that kind of stuff, and that was fascinating. That's number one. um but I think the other thing that kind of popped up in my head when you were talking, Michael, is we see evidence of this kind of like hologram effect
Mm-hmm.
when we talk or we listen to um witnesses to a crime. There could be 10 people standing in approximately the same place, and they'll give you 10 different stories. Now, they're mostly the same most of the time, but there are differences. And it's like, well, why did you pick that up? And why did you pick that up? And why didn't you pick that up? And, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. So it's like, what is reality? Is it the collective? I would say yes. But then if we had 10 more people, we'd get 10 more stories. So is that the reality? We could do it on videotape. Is that the reality? That's two-dimensional. So there's all it. I don't know what the differentiator is other than perspective and the way our brains work. Sometimes we see what we want to see, and sometimes we don't see what we don't want to see. So those are
Mm-hmm.
just two interesting thoughts that came to my mind.
Yeah.
There's a part in your brain called the reticular activating system. So what this does is works as a filtering mechanism. So if here's an example. So when Columbus was sailing over the horizon, many of the Native Americans in the area had no concept of the ships that they were sailing, right? So only the shaman could see the ships on the horizon, and the average person couldn't see it because it wasn't in their lexicon, it wasn't in their world view. And so their brains just naturally filter that out. And so they literally couldn't see the ships. But the shaman, obviously, he's trained to break through and be in this different reality, so he could see the ships, and so that's how these filtering mechanisms work in your brain. And we filter and perceive and modulate our experience of everything. So it's all we're all kind of walking around in our own little bubbles of reality, and we're calling it life and reality, but it's all our own. And when you own that and you begin to play with that and realize you can adjust it and adjust your perceptions, and if something is painful or limiting,
Mm-hmm.
we can work with that and we can expand the view of life so that we're able to have a better experience overall.
Right. And
Yeah,
it
cool.
seems like the best way for us to get there and to have these breakthroughs is painfully through triggers. And it seems like that's when you can really recognize. I know for me, the more aware I become, and we also have triggers, right? Like forever. I don't know. Is there, do
They
we
can go away. They can go away. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I've found myself being able to rationalize the moment and be like, whoa, what was that? Where did that come from? And kind of walk back from that. Is there a practical way that you would suggest when we're experiencing a trigger to grow from it and and turn it into something transformational instead of going into a spiral?
Yeah. So you can look at a trigger as like a button that says there's an experience usually it's an experience from our past. And so the trigger is something painful from our past, much of the time, even from childhood, right? So the button gets pressed and suddenly the whole experience loads up and it has to run its course, right?
Okay.
So one of the things you can start to do, one is calm down, obviously, but also begin to explore the experience itself. What am I actually feeling? And where is that coming from in my past? What are the memories that seem so, that lady in the supermarket ignored me, and suddenly it triggers me very much. What is that? Oh my gosh. Well, that's a replica of my mom not giving me the attention as a little boy that I needed. Right.
Right.
And
Okay.
I felt ignored, and the whole thing loads up in my system because it's not resolved from the past. So when you can realize that the trigger is just a replay of these early experiences, and you can go to the root of those, to the original memories, and you can reprogram those memories. So I can say, oh, when I was 5 and I didn't get attention, I'm still worthy. I'm still lovable as I am. That was mom's issue, right? And there's techniques and exercises we can do to actually get that to take in the neural net. And when you do that, then the lady in the supermarket has no effect on me, right? Because I've reprogrammed the original experience that is what's behind the trigger.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay.
One thing I think I used to do was live the life of affirmations. Like she's lovable too, and I'm lovable, and so it was actually a form of kind of suppressing what was really happening. So outside of work with Michael one-on-one, and it's in the book where we could do check-ins. Since I'm a very much like a left brain thinker, supercomputer brain, I would rationalize. She's not looking at me. What's up with her? Oh, she's a human. So every human is okay. We got to love and connect. But instead now, the tools are for me, like checking in what's happening in my brain, what's happening in my body, what's happening with my emotions, what's happening with my energy level. Because sometimes I would just wake up, and it's in the book, in a really kind of crappy mood and just be in a funk is what I would call it. And then I realized I'm in a funk. Okay, well, what's going on? Well, physically, I'm not feeling that great right now. Oh, okay. Mentally, what's happening? Oh, I something came up that I read that put me in a bad mood or that made me sad. And so to look at it from like these 4 perspectives of kind of like emotions, energetically, mentally, physically, to look at it from those perspectives, you could start getting clues as to what's really happening. And in the past, like what didn't work was like sugarcoating everything, because to be a kind person, I shouldn't have feelings about that person ignoring me because it doesn't have anything to do with me and this and that. But it's like, that's not understanding really what's deeper. And then I would, tell Michael, some lady ignored me and I'm feeling this and that. And he's like, let's go back to childhood. Okay. Because that's really how to heal that experience. And that's what's amazing. And I'll still say like, gosh, this happened, but through practices, I'm able to kind of get over it myself. And he's like, what if you weren't even triggered? I thought, oh yeah, that's the state I want to be in. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
So, and then those people stop showing up at the store. It's really like slightly mystical too.
Yeah. I feel like I have phases of that where I'm just like, everything is great. Like, nobody bothers me. We're all one. And then, and then those things still happen. So, it's got to be like this process and, just going back and doing the work and maybe going and seeking out mountaintop experiences and you guys are creating those. You guys are starting to do retreats around this work, which is amazing. Can you tell us like what that looks like and what those are about?
Why don't you start, Marcey?
Yeah. Oh, we're still, I think, coming off the blissful weekend in Tahoe, and what a beautiful place. We had our first longer weekend retreat, and it was called Quantum Leap. And Michael explains that if you think of, and he could do a better job explaining it, but if you think of like rings around a planet, like we don't have to go step by step by step. We could make these large leaps, and it was just a combination of this great group together, the beautiful natural environment, lots of meditation, really walking through what's laid out in the book, talking, holding space for each other. Just to be in that really truly mountaintop experience for the weekend. There are people that are still talking about like, I just kind of want to hug everyone right now. Like, I don't know what's going on, but this showed up and I got this call and I don't know, things are still really good. And so we have that together, and then we have a 1-day version with a larger group coming up in San Francisco that we're really excited for. Michael, as a facilitator, what were your thoughts with the weekend in Tahoe and what you're looking forward to in San Francisco?
Yeah, we're really, my focus in working with people is I want to get people permanently shifted. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, like when I work with someone, if I can put myself out of business, I'm doing my job correctly, right? Because I want to empower people. I want to say, you're your own authority. I want to create peers. I want to create people that know their own truth and can really follow their purpose. And so it's the retreats we're doing is really like an immersion into a lot of things. It's the whole transformative process and how to create change. But then we're really using all that as a springboard to break through into that mountaintop experience, into how do I describe this? We call it the mystical state. Mm-hmm. It's really like you said earlier, Megan, when you're talking about like I have these moments of oneness and it all just feels like it's flowing. That's mm-hmm. a mountaintop right there. And so you're tapping into your greater self, the truth of you, right? This expanded version of ourself. And mm-hmm. so that's what we want to give people a sense of, is that we're not just these individuals, and we're not, we are limited in our individuality, but it's a both and. I'm mm-hmm. this individual and I'm separate, but I'm also connected and expanded and one with everything.
Yes.
And so when we can live both of those realities, that's where you get an integrative experience. And that's where the work and the change, a lifestyle of, following a trigger doesn't become a big deal anymore, because it's a lifestyle and it's all within that greater space. So there's just this acceptance and love and appreciation for the totality of our humanity, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like I've achieved this and I'm like in this superhuman place, right? No, I'm still flawed. I still road rage sometimes. I'm still have my triggers and my buttons. Mm-hmm. I think what is different from me and a lot of people, though, is I don't self-judge myself when those triggers happen. Mm-hmm. I'm able to hold myself in the same regard as when I'm doing great. And I still mess up and I still trip, but it's the space that we hold ourselves in. You could call it self-love or self-appreciation. Mm-hmm. It's what's great about you, what's challenging about you, the sum total of your humanity. And we just hold ourselves and we begin to appreciate that we're all in this together, and everyone is just phenomenal in that place. Right. Everyone has some gift to share, some way they fit in to the greater picture. And I think that's how we're going to face the collective challenges, is when we learn how to better come together. And like I look at Marcey and our relationship as a great example, because I went 10 times farther than I could have on my own because of Marcey's help, and the way we worked together and the synergy we had really taught me a lot about how to collaborate and cooperate and get greater results when we come together.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Marcey and I, like we have this we still hit snags every once in a while. Like we had one yesterday, right? And we had this little like moment where but we talk it out really easily and we get through it really easily because we have a space to work in and we have a tool set that allows us to appreciate, hey, like, oh, I got a little button press there. Okay, can we process that a little bit? What's going on there? So
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think it's really an appreciation of our humanity at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're able to like offer that, some call it grace, to yourself and that acceptance, and then being like the next level would be, probably offering it to others, and, in that realization that, that we are not separate from each other. And you talk about like a collective awakening to that. What do you think that looks like? Do you think that like more and more people are, realizing that, I mean, could you see like this giant shift in humanity happening once we start, progressing that way? And like, what do you think that looks like?
I go back and forth sometimes.
What is your outlook on humankind?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, now this is the hardest question I've gotten all day here. So
Yeah.
I haven't a clue.
Yeah, I mean, it could. Like, I see that happening. You talk about like it being like a collective, like a shift, like, and maybe that looks like something big.
Doesn't it seem like sometimes we're advancing as a society and sometimes we're declining as a society?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like I can't figure it out because it's like both seem to be happening at the same time. And so I think it is possible that more and more people can awaken, but that's really my mission. I want to create a community of more and more people that understand, like, we need to do the inner work. We need to find our goodness and then bring that out into the world, right? So it's the inside guide, but when you reach your center, the next leg of the journey is actually to come outside and to share who you are and what you have to offer the world with the rest of the world. Right. And so that's, I think, in the collective awakening, if people are doing the inner work and they have a space that's okay to do that and a pathway to do that, and they realize, what they have to share and what their purpose is.
Yeah.
And they bring that out, there's going to be a place for them in the world. There's going to, and we kind of fit together in Bill's metaphor, like puzzle pieces, like not just the puzzle of our own self, but the puzzle of how we fit together relationally with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in a way we could be like, we're creating some beautiful mosaic, but nobody knows what the end design is. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But definitely creating something. And and how does that not affect the world, in a positive way? I think that,
So I hold hope that, we are evolving, and at the same time, it's, we're not going to deny that there's some challenges in society right now, and some global collective challenges that are threatening us all, so we have to be able to be open-eyed to those and address them with eyes wide open, and still hold the positive view that we're all, doing the best we can, and we're evolving as a species. So
yeah. Well, thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that sometimes because I see all the knuckleheads and yahoos and, just some of the words you're using would offend people. Like,
oh, really?
You haven't used woke yet, but awake is woke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, you got to watch out for that. So you talk about intention and creating your own reality. And way back when I was an athlete, I read about psychology and visualization and things like that. You know, things, tools that would help you achieve the things that you didn't have already or didn't achieve yet. And visualization is a big part of that. Talk about that whole concept of intention and reality and all that stuff. I know that's a big, broad subject, but you can go
Yeah.
anywhere you want with it.
That's important, to be really intentional about what our next edge is, or what's our next chapter, or what are we creating in our life. We try to encourage people to take it beyond just visualization. So really begin in your intention to create the full experience in your imagination of what that next reality or next chapter or next frontier is for you. So your vision could be to be driving a Ferrari, but the full experience is what it feels like to be behind the wheel.
Okay.
Right. And
We're
so you
gonna-
really want to,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
we really want to create the felt experience. The brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and an imagined one. So the more you practice these things, but to really feel the energy, the expansion, like this bigger state of being that, maybe like if I'm more successful in my social media and I'm making more money and then I'm going to feel greater. Right. Well, I can actually start to feel greater now en route. I can still have those goals and still be doing those things. But as I embody that greater feeling, those things begin to happen more easily and naturally. And I naturally do the correct behaviors that are going to align with that.
Would you call that manifesting?
I would not call that manifesting.
Okay.
Only because I just don't use that word.
Okay.
Because to me, I think I used it at one time, but it always felt like too much pressure that I had to do it all myself.
Okay.
And so you could call it, I mean, it works great. You could call it manifesting if you want, but I like attracting better. You know, and that I'm going to do my part. I have to do my work and do the behaviors and do everything in line with what I say I want. But I'm in a co-creative relationship with the universe. I know that sounds a bit woo-woo and a bit woke language. But I don't know how else to say it, in that, like, there's something greater that we're all a part of.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you it seems to me if I manifest, I'm this isolated silo and I have to do it all myself, versus I like the concept of, like, I'm going to embody this greater experience and play my part to the hilt and do what I need to do. But providence comes in. Different things start to work in my favor when I'm doing that. Right. So I can't say it's all me doing it, in a way.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like taking and giving, some of the responsibility, letting it go and, just focusing on what you can do and what your part is and what your gifts are, instead of, I guess that makes sense.
It's still my responsibility to embody the state that I want to, right?
Right.
So like at one point in this launch, we, weren't quite getting the results, and I started to get a little down, and I was kind of like a little peevish, and like, it's not working. And then I realized, that's not the right energy to work from. Right. And so I did a reset, and we just kind of hopped over the results and reset. What is our vision? What are we? And then things started working again. Right. But it's also kind of working on, maybe not quite on the timeline. Like I can be a little impatient sometimes. So I want everything yesterday. Right. And maybe it's happening, but it's just happening on a little longer timeline. Right. And so if I can keep in that positive vision of it all expanding and all growing, it's a way more enjoyable journey, and I see that, and the results are showing up. So it's
right. Yeah.
I
And
call
you get
it,
to
we called it in the book the something more factor. So whether it's, religious or not, or spiritual or energetic, whatever, it's like when you can hold that space for what this vision is, and start, and do the work to overcome things that may be preventing you, your programming that may stop you. Once you could start opening up, then something more happens. Things show up. Like Bill, you talked about just the connection with Megan, and that you had, this podcast, concept for a while. And then all of a sudden, like those puzzle pieces came together, and then all of a sudden this connection at a certain time, and it could be luck, and it could be timing, it could be whatever you call it, but we call it the something more factor. And that's why I love those little synchronicities, because to me, that's a reminder, like, that's something more. The unexplainable is supporting me right now. And it's nothing that I could sometimes imagine for myself.
Yeah. Can you explain synchronous? I mean, we all know what the word synchronicity means, but like, how does that like show up in your life? And it does for me too. And like just little things where it does feel like, oh, I must be in alignment with where I'm supposed to be going. But like, yeah, what does that look like in your life? Just little things, or, I mean, how do you see it show up?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it could be anything from, somebody calling that I've been thinking of, or Michael and I having the exact same idea about something and calling and saying, hey, I just wrote this up. And he said, I did too. It's like, hey, how did that happen? Or opportunities coming up, or, letting something go, and an issue that doesn't feel like the right time to kind of own it. And then something comes and makes it a non-issue or event. And those things get me so excited, because it reminds me that I'm not in charge. And for a former control freak, that's hard to accept. But now that I've realized like how something much more beautiful is awaiting out there for me if I let go, because I never was in charge. I never was in control. So once I could get aligned to this something more factor and living, my life purpose, then those show up in fun ways.
Right. And probably more than when we just like write it off as like, oh, that was just a coincidence and I'm just going to move on. But like recognizing and celebrating those things, and then seeing them show up more and more and more, like as we go down the right path, is really exciting. It's kind of, it's fun and exciting.
Yeah. The book is the inside guide, right? And so that's what we're really empowering people to follow your inner guidance, right? And that's always the true guide in us, is when we get still and quiet and we can hear our intuitive voice, right? The hunches. And synchronicity is just one more signpost, one more way that things show up outside of us as well as inside of us. So it's not always, but I feel like it's always in response to the questions we're living, right? And I'm kind of have an inquiry or something, and then you get these kind of little messages or something that says, yeah, that's the direction you need to go. But that process starts from within, and it starts from listening in your heart, and just taking time to be still and quiet in our busy lives, time out, and just a walk in the woods, a walk on the beach, a walk in the mountains, whatever is a place where you find peace and respite, and those moments are extremely important for us to be guided from an internal place and to find that internal authority. And then those synchronicities start to happen more often. They start to happen. And it just becomes more like that mystery unfolding, or just sometimes I don't know the next step, but it seems to appear as I'm taking it,
Yeah.
So I have a question around that, and maybe it's a contention. You mentioned earlier, Michael, about how when Columbus was coming over the horizon and the natives couldn't see the ships.
Yeah.
But the shaman could.
Yeah.
Is it possible that those synchronicities or luck or schadenfreude or whatever. They're there. We just haven't been trained to see them. And now that we become more introspective and learn more about ourselves and learn more about how this whole process works, maybe a new dimension has opened before our senses, not just our eyes, but our senses.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, I think you're onto something there, because
like maybe they're always there and you just never saw them.
That is, I know the more that I meditated, my perceptions changed, and things that were subtle began to be more profound. And right. And definitely it's almost like there's another reality interpenetrating the 3D reality, but we're not privy to it until we stop and start to slow down. Remember that one day, Marcey, we were sitting out in the backyard and we did kind of a little meditation, and we came out of it and suddenly, like, the light was more sparkly, the leaves had a different sheen on them. Our perception had changed in the 10 minutes just because we took this time out. And then we came out and we noticed almost like a different reality around ourselves. So I think you're right on the money that it is present, and it's just our perception that misses it a lot of times.
Yeah. So along those lines, and I don't want to get like super controversial, and I don't want to get you guys in trouble, but I'm going to ask the question and you can like refuse to answer. So a lot of people, they go on these experiences, not necessarily retreat, but you can call it that too, where, let's just say chemicals are involved. Do you think there's a role for chemicals, maybe it's ayahuasca or marijuana, and I'm not condoning this to anybody, you make your own choices, but do you see a play? Because I've heard people who've done these things and they are like, part of me says they're hallucinating, right? But part of me is like, well, maybe they are seeing something that is there that I can't see. Do you think there's a role for that, or am I barking up the wrong tree here?
I think it can be helpful for certain people in certain contexts. And I think it's a very tricky line, and we have to really listen to our internal guidance if that's the right path for us or not. Definitely what I think is a trap, like you can use a hallucinogenic to have an experience, but then really the key is saying, okay, I touched that, now I have to find that without the hallucinogenic. Right. And so if you're repeatedly using these avenues, you're cheating, right? You're just, it's a shortcut, and it's going to have an adverse effect in the long run. It's going to affect your consciousness and your psyche. So I think I just think it's up to the individual, and everyone needs to make their own choices with that. And you should choose wisely and really discern around it. Don't just make a rash decision, because those are in a hallucinogenic experience in the wrong person can trigger a psychotic break, right? It could bring one person to enlightenment, and it could bring another person to psychosis. So it just depends on the individual, and it depends on if it feels correct for that particular person or not.
Okay.
I will neither condone or how do you say that? I will neither
deny or confirm or deny. Right. One thing I thought was, so meaningful. Like through writing this book, I had to kind of deal with my own stuff. So, first part mind, second part body, and all of a sudden it's like this body stuff comes up, food and exercise and like the something more showed up. So a yoga practice showed up, a new food plan showed up that became a lifestyle. And, I got to a point where I was healthier than I've been in 20 years, because it's, my mind was in the right place, opportunity came up, and I was able to sit with and process some of the things that held me back. And so I remember telling Michael, I said, oh my gosh, I can't, I've lost 25 pounds and I'm feeling, great and strong. I'm like, I love this feeling. And he said, don't continue or don't try and grasp for that feeling. Mm-hmm. Continue with the practices that brought you to that. Because if you continue to try and hold on to that feeling, and whether it's this enlightenment feeling on a particular substance, and like I said, mine tends to come out of the kitchen. That's my controlled substance. But it's like, instead of trying to grasp that feeling and always chase that, mm-hmm. It's like that feeling came because of certain practices. So it really so whenever I kind of get off track, I think, gosh, I felt really good, but that's not a guaranteed feeling every day, all the time. But I have probably a better chance of getting there if I can continue, making certain food choices, continue my yoga, my meditation practice, being around community, being, grateful for the things that are showing up and actually doing the work. And that was huge for me, because I would start giving up if I didn't feel that feeling and couldn't maintain that feeling. I would say, forget it, and shelf the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's interesting in the book, you list some reasons why we avoid looking inward. And one of them is, external, like we go for external validation, distraction, suppression. The one that I thought was most interesting was spiritual bypass and toxic positivity. And I think we are seeing a lot of that. Or I see a lot of that as like, it's almost become like its own culture. Like, and how do we come out of these things? Just by, doing the work. I mean, how do we practically, not give ourselves these reasons to do that anymore?
Well, if you're committed to your journey, you'll see it, it'll show up,
Yeah. I almost think that like it's hard for people to recognize the toxic positivity. Like they think, oh, well, it's great. Everything's great. This is good. God's going to take care of, these things. And we put in all of this faith, but, it's almost like, a way of camouflaging, would you say? Like, instead of doing the work, is that another? Yeah.
And that, to each in their own time, if someone's needing that camouflage, mm-hmm. I let them be. I'm not going to rattle the cage if someone's not ready.
Okay.
But I think again, I'm a big proponent of internal authority. And so I'm not going to sit and preach or tell anyone the way or how they need to live their life.
Okay,
right. And it's each person's responsibility. But, if those people begin to notice, like the haters that show up and they're just like, oh, get away. I can't handle your bad energy. Right. Or I can't handle your woke energy. Right. There's a lot of projection going on, and there's a lot of something they're not owning in themselves, but they're either going to wake up or they're not in this lifetime. And by wake up, I mean, they're going to notice that and be able to transcend it and get beyond it, or they're not. And it's okay. I'm not the decider of who should do that and how they should do that. It's just, all I'm doing is saying I have a tool set and I can guide you. And really, if you're willing to take that journey, here's some tools that help and can get you through those kind of delusions.
Right. Or maybe just like recognizing too that like we're going to do these things sometimes. We're going to sometimes look outside of ourselves and, we're going to sometimes externalize these things. And those are habits that have been conditioned to do, or things that we've coped with, or ways that we've worked through it in the past, and now we're using it as an excuse. But maybe just recognizing that we do those things and we want to get past it, and we want to, be better and get there. So, yeah.
And it just takes an inward glance. Like when we do that, if I'm in a distraction and like I come home and I just plop in front of the TV and when I'm actually like feeling something that I don't want to feel.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I need to do that. Sometimes it's just, I'm tired. I don't want to process. I've been processing all day long. I just I need some checkout time, but it's each person's responsibility to determine that for themselves, and to say, is this something I need to look at now? Or is there a repeating pattern here that warrants some introspection, or is it just a moment that I can brush off? I don't have to look at it. It's not a big deal. I'm just tired today or whatever,
Yeah.
So, I just think there's no hard or fast formula for these things. We're all unique individuals. And that's the beauty and the challenge in this that's why I wrote the book, because I say I'm a guide, but all I'm doing is guiding people into themselves so they can be their own guide. Right.
Yeah.
And that's really the essence, is only each person can determine for themselves what's correct and what's the right path and what's to face and what's not to face and what's theirs and what's someone else's. We each just need to take responsibility and find that place where we become our own guide.
Right.
For me, a little bit it too was just because I think through affirmations, as mentioned earlier, I think often I would try and have that toxic positivity where any negative feelings are kind of wrong. And so to understand that there's a shadow side to all of the stuff that I really, really like. And so it's like, if I have that opposite side, and so sometimes it's kind of fun, like, let me look at that opposite side. Let me look at that shadow side and love and accept her and realize that like that person had a role to play. And I don't dump any of it. It's like, I pick and choose what I want. And then when I can do that, then it's okay to be, and I always give the example of like, I love being organized, but there's a part of me that's chaotic. And so now I'll leave stuff out and have a chaotic environment if there's other priorities that I have. And so to have chaos and not judge myself for that, or not have to pretend that everything is fine and I'm only super organized, is like, it lets me off the hook. And so to just acknowledge both sides of our personality, I think helped me deal with, thinking that anything that wasn't like pretty packaged up was something I needed to kind of get rid of and ignore or put aside.
Right. Yeah.
Can we talk about limiting beliefs?
Oh, yes.
So I have 3 questions about that's going to open up a whole discussion. And I know we're over an hour, but you guys have time? You guys good?
Yeah.
This is great. I'm totally enthused by this conversation. So loving it.
Okay, good. Me too. So limiting beliefs. We all have them, or at least we struggle with them, right? How do they get in the way? How did they get there in the first place? How do you overcome them? Or do you? Or do you find a coping mechanism around them?
So limiting belief is originally put in place by an early experience. So beliefs cause us to experience things, it starts from an experience. So there's an experience, an impactful experience, say something in my childhood that causes me to believe something about myself or about life, and that may not be true. So for instance, daddy was never around, therefore I'm not worthy, right? And so that I internalize a false belief about my worth, right? And then that limiting belief begins to inform the rest of my experience and operates in a circular way. So the belief creates the experience, which creates the belief, which creates the experience. And it just loops around based on that early imprint from the early experience. Okay, once that belief is lodged in place, it just runs on autopilot. And then it begins to work as an attractor pattern, and it creates our reality around us. So the way to begin to work with that is first you have to understand the experience and begin to unpack the experience of something that's a problem for a person or an issue, right? So I don't know, if we look at the self-worth example, someone is not making enough money, right? And they're like, I don't know why I can't increase my income. Well, income is tied to your worth and how worthy you feel about receiving, right? So if we unpack it all and we go back and we find that their financial wellness is associated with that lack of self-worth from the early experience, we need to unpack the belief that goes along with that and find, okay, it's almost like an imprint from that early experience. And so when we remake the experience, when we go back and bring resourceful pieces of information to, and this is part of the technique we use. So I'm going to try to explain this because this is where it gets a little hard to explain, but it's about getting the right piece. Consciously, a lot of times we know the right answer, but why does the experience keep happening? And it's because there's this unconscious aspect that keeps recreating the experience beneath the threshold of our awareness. So when we can take resources from our present, say, okay, I know the right answer. I know I am worthy and I know I'm capable, but why do I still have this feeling of not worthy, right? And I can go and bring that back into the original experience and know my inherent worth in light of my dad's ignorance, right? My dad was doing the best he could, but I can begin to experience my value and worth that I was born with, inherent value and worth as a human being. And then I begin to form a new belief around that experience. So the way to change the limiting belief is to change the experience, and create a new experience, which creates a new belief, which now begins to loop in a positive way. Right.
So are you in effect replacing that imprint that you have with another imprint?
Yeah, in a way, I mean, you could say that none of this is real, right? And like feeling not worthy or feeling worthy are both illusions. But isn't it better to feel worthy, right? So I'm going to opt for that one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you kind of install or give an upgrade or it's almost like the early experience is still looping under the surface. And so if you see that almost like a computer program, and you can imagine your brain is like this supercomputer and you're still running Windows 95 on it, So all we're doing is going back and updating the program. The hardware is working fine. It's just a software issue. And so all we're doing is bringing new information into the memory banks, into the reference points, and it ripples through our body and our system, and it changes how we reference ourselves because that early memory was informing part of our identity.
And can you talk about the interplay between the conscious and the subconscious self in that role?
So consciously, much of the time, we know what we want. We're aware of our intentions. And then unconsciously, we're actually wanting what we don't want. Right. And so that's a concept that some people have a hard time digesting, but it's like we actually unconsciously, we actually want our pain and our limitation.
Because it's familiar.
We're attached to, for a number of reasons. It's familiar. Yeah. It goes back to our family. It's loyalties in the family. There could be so many different branches of why we're still entrenched in the old paradigm or the old experience. Okay. So the key is to begin to look at those unconscious attachments and be able to shift those so that you can kind of remove the old experience and replace it with the new experience. But the unconscious keeps us running, and it's very amenable to suggestion. So it just kind of runs on autopilot, and they call it unconscious because we're not conscious of what's going on beneath the surface. So a lot of the techniques I'm working with people, we're trying to make the unconscious conscious. We're seeing what's running under the surface or in how we're processing and how we're creating our reality, and getting into the operating system so we can go and move some of the wires around and shift the experience itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's kind of how it operates. They're just two sides of the same coin. It's conscious is what you're aware of. Unconscious is, like an iceberg. There's a lot more going on in our experiences and in our reality than we're aware of in any one moment, and we can only tend to what we tend to. But once we start going in with that laser and start shining a light on the early experience and saying, okay, here's where it originated. There's the memory. There's you in the memory. This is how you're referencing it. This is how you're creating it in your reality. And this is what that little you at 5 needs to learn differently about. The little you got a false belief and it just ran on autopilot for a lot of years.
right.
But we're going to take the new belief of inherent worth and value and bring it to that little you and pop it in the right place in your brain. So the little you at 5 knows you were valuable, no matter what. No matter what was occurring in your family system at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And when that part of you gets the new update, it happens in the unconscious, and then it ripples through and becomes more automatic. So that's the beauty of the neural reprogramming, is you don't always have to remember to be in the new outcome and to be in the new experience, because we're kind of inserting it into the unconscious, so it happens automatically.
Right. You're almost like replacing it. And the way that I learned this same technique was, what are the 3 W's, what's the lie, and then replace it with the truth. So what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? When is the first time I felt this way? What is the lie that I made up about myself? And then we have to replace it then with the truth. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that lie, like, okay, now I know like what the lie is, what my bad experience was. But then we kind of forget to pull in what is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us get
the
stuck
funny
there.
thing is, this is where you usually need a practitioner, because we can't observe ourselves from the outside. But as a practitioner, I can see how people are processing, and we can get to the access point. How are they pulling up the memory and the reference point? That's very difficult to see on your own. But when you're working with someone who's trained, we're kind of trained to begin to spot that, and we call it an access, and get to the access. It's the core informing memory. And then when you bring, just like you said, bring that information into that memory, that's when the change ripples through and happens.
Right. Yeah.
That's when the change becomes more permanent and more automatic.
Yeah. We're such interesting beings. So complex.
It's really fascinating to be in a space to observe Michael processing someone, and that's the kind of term that we've used. So these retreat weekends or an all-day kind of intensive, there's opportunity to kind of work through some of these things, and then we're starting a free monthly kind of inspired living work group, so we could teach people the tools. And just being even on a Zoom call, it's been pretty inspiring to watch somebody mention something, and Michael's got this amazing sense of some opportunity to go in and ask some questions and do some shifting kind of real time. And it's really fascinating. And then like I was saying before, then all of a sudden you see that trigger start to fade, and where something used to bother you, it just doesn't. And I even had told them once, I said, gosh, I can't do the unconscious, because I can't think about it. Right. It's like I have this weird thing that where I thought I could get into the unconscious myself through my consciousness. He's like, that's why it's called the unconscious, because it's going on without your thinking about it. So it's sometimes complicated and hard to unravel, but through our online groups and our retreats, it's really inspiring, even if you're not, feeling like you want to be processed, to observe someone, and it's not painful and it's not scary. It really is fascinating. Like I said, it's like the surgical way with his 25 years kind of doing this, to go in and really hone in on something. And it's a beautiful experience to see someone, like, for lack of a better term, like, heal something that happened years ago in their past. And it's it really is a gift to be part of this.
Yeah. And probably healing too, when you can relate to, oh my gosh, like, I have thought that way, or I have that lie or that belief, and to see them, let that go, it is kind of healing for you too, probably for you too. Like, I've seen that happen, and it's really transformative, and really a beautiful thing to see people heal in that way. I think that's great. So where can we find you? How can we be a part of it? How can we do this?
Yeah, that's so we have our website, which is www.loveguides.us. So Love Guides Us, which I think we may have touched and not said the word love, but really that's like the container for kind of the world of this work, and what we hope to build a community around, and what we see is happening. So we're going to continue to have retreats. There's one coming up later this year. We have on our website, there's a calendar. We have some events already scheduled for next year. Michael has a speaking event if you're in the Bay Area and Marin at is it the Whole Life Expo, Michael? In Marin in April. So definitely check the website. And one immediate thing someone could do is reach out. Michael does a free consultation to see if there's good partnerships working, and if he could assist and support. Also, buy the book. That's a really great way to connect with us.
Yes. And this is the book, the Inside Guide. This is the book. You can get it on Amazon. Is that the preferred place for people to buy the book? Is Amazon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just to the virtual gatherings we're doing are once a month. So we got scheduled out for they'll be monthly. I think the next one is October 19th. And again, those are on the website. And then the next retreat event is an all-day event, and that's a full day if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's going to be in San Francisco on November 11th. And so we welcome anyone that wants to explore, to go deeper, to shift things that are getting in the way, to have a better experience, to begin to feel inspired and tap into the wonderful greatness of you and your purpose for being here.
It's so great.
Yeah, so we said the word purpose a lot, but I think I mean, if it's okay with you guys to bring you back, talk about purpose.
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people don't even. I mean, what is my purpose? How do I get there?
Yeah.
How do I find out? How do I know? Right. So.
Well, it starts.
I'd love to talk. I'd love to dedicate a whole episode to that.
Oh, you're talking about another. I was going to jump right into it, but
give us a preview.
Yeah.
Well, purpose comes from your passion. So it starts from the things you're really passionate and interested in. And then also where your gifts align with that too, right? And so there's an alignment. And I think a lot of people think you have to have this grandiose mission, like, okay, I have to, but it really starts on a day-to-day basis of how you begin to live out that passion and the things you're really interested in, and following that clue, putting those puzzle pieces together. Because I think once you start the journey of purpose, it really is a puzzle, and it's really an unfolding of like, okay, what am I really here to do? Really, really. I mean, yeah, I have these roles in this life, and I'm a parent, or I'm a partner, or, but those are roles. deeper, it could be, okay, yeah, I'm here to raise my family and create a beautiful, loving environment for that. That could be part of my purpose, but maybe there's more. Maybe there's more to it, right? Because we see like a lot of empty nesters who, they've been invested in their role as a parent, and then the kids leave and they're like, I have this sense of unfulfillment. What's going on, right? So there has to be something more, something greater, and usually it comes from those clues in what we're passionate about.
Awesome.
What just gets you excited? I mean, what things do you think about that get you really jazzed? And it's, I mean, when Michael and I wrote the book, it was a year, and somebody could look back and say, gosh, it was a lot of work, but it wasn't work. It was like these amazing conversations and this development of this relationship, and finding, I always knew that I loved this type of work, and so this aligns with my purpose, and I've always been like a networker, communicator, relationship person, and so this showed up as an opportunity to live out my purpose, but I do so in my banking job also. It's like I'm serving communities through my job. I'm connecting people in my day-to-day job. And so purpose doesn't mean like you're again on a mountaintop somewhere. It's living in like a vocation that you're excited about, or hobbies and things that really get you jazzed. That's a way to start exploring. Like, gosh, is that tied to my purpose? But when I always ask like, what gets you excited? You could just see all of a sudden the wheels turning and a little smile on someone's face, and it's like, yeah, go follow that. Go investigate that some more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and another thing we didn't talk about at all, but I think we really touched on it, and again, it's probably very individualistic. Well, we know it is, and that is, what is success? Is that finding your purpose and going after it? Is that working on yourself and, removing those limiting beliefs? What is it? And I think it's different for everybody, but I'd like to hear your perspective on what is success.
Well, it is different for everyone, but I would ask, what is the feeling of success? Regardless of the circumstances of your success, what does it feel like when you have success inside? And can you begin to tap into that feeling of success? Maybe you're not quite as far as you want to be, right? I'm not done with the journey, right? I got a long ways to go. We got goals, we got intentions, plans, right? But I can feel like a success where I'm at en route on my journey, right? And to me, it's
Awesome.
a feeling of joy. Like I love what I do, so I'm successful. Like, that's enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Marcey, putting you on the spot.
Oh, thanks. To me, it's
You're welcome.
to me, it's living that life of ease and flow and peace, and it's not high highs or which, again, talking about duality, there's low lows that sometimes come with trying to achieve this like like gathering of things or stuff or whatever that thing is. So I'm now back in the middle of successes if I'm feeling peaceful and love and spending time with people that I love, having conversations like this, and being in this space day to day. This isn't we talked about mountaintop at the beginning. This isn't about I'm going to do this for a weekend and then come back and live a crappy life that I'm stomping around and unhappy. It's like I'm feeling successful if I could live with this feeling in this space every day. And the other stuff will come, like, no doubt about it. I know it like I know it. The financial success, the stability, the health, well-being. It's like those come and go, but I know that is closely connected to holding this state.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
All right, thanks. Anything else you want to ask, Megan?
No, I think
or anything you guys want to add?
Yeah.
I feel like we only touched on like 1/3 of the book, maybe.
I know. So. There's so much. Yeah. And I need to go back and read it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot of content. We're kind of considering in a revised version of maybe a way that it's a commitment to read the book, really, because you're going to go on a journey and you're going to start to really have some insights in yourself as you take that journey, right? And that was our intention. We want people to really go for it and break through the stuff that's holding you back. Feel that inspired life. Feel what's possible for you, because it's available.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for being on for an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, has it been that long?
This is our longest podcast, but it felt like a brief, like just 45 minutes or so. We really went
that's
for
how
it.
good conversations go.
Right. You guys were awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, so
thanks
great.
for having us.
And
so great. Thank you.
And again, if you guys feel like you got value out of this in any way whatsoever, please come back.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
We'd love to have you on again, because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah,
right.
We'll
Yeah.
come back as much as you want, because this is just a pure joy for both of us. I know I can speak for Marcey there too, and you guys there was a real synergy, and I felt a real connection with you guys. So yeah, we'll come back as much as you want.
Yeah.
We're
oh my gosh, thank you so much for saying that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was really great, and I am a huge fan. You know, we've done a few of these so far, but I was really excited about this because I am a true fan of this book. And thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
See you guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.